So every time he sticks his tongue out, he yawns.
Pretty much. And that's a characteristic very specific to him.
Oh, yes.
Zoe does not do that. She yawns, but she doesn't stick her tongue out like that real far before she does.
Well, he seems comfortable with
How
hers.
many hours they sleep, right?
They do. They sleep a lot during the day. So they need time to be able to do that. So if Dash were to be fully booked for his entire day, he would have 2 hours of encounter and that's it. He would have an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. Lots of breaks in between where he just gets time to do whatever he wants to do. And even after, if they were to be fully booked, like Zoe, if she has a fully booked day, and I go in there around 4 o'clock after she's done with her encounters and start cleaning up her enclosure, she'll be climbing at me through those branches trying to get me to pick her up because that's what she genuinely enjoys doing, and she is an ambassador sloth. And that's not natural for sloths to do. Obviously, wild sloth is not going to do that. They're going to be climbing the opposite way, trying to get away from you. So it is pretty incredible what we have here.
So how far can they see?
They can't see very far, and what they do see that's close up is basically just blobs and shapes. They have a condition in their eyes, it's called rod monochromacy. That means that they only have rod cells in their eyes and no cone cells. So the cone cells are what's responsible for seeing color. They are colorblind because they don't have those, but they do have quite a few of rod cells, more than we have. The rod cells are what picks up motion. So they can see something moving in front of them pretty well, but can't really distinguish what it is. It's basically all just blobs and shapes in black and white. If you've ever watched an action movie that has like night goggle vision in it, that's basically what they see. You can't really distinguish, faces or anything. It's just all shapes. So he can look over here and, see that I'm sitting here, but if I wasn't talking, he wouldn't know who I am.
He can't smell you or anything?
He does. So since their sense of hearing is so poor, their sense of eyesight is so poor, their sense of hearing and sense of smell is actually pretty heightened. And so even just a noise that would be normal for us, like a door opening and closing really quick, or a draft, closing it pretty quick, is normal for us, but it's really startling for them. A, because they can't see it coming, and B, because it's just a lot louder for them. And it's the same way for people, if we lose one of our senses, our other senses tend to be heightened. It's the same for them.
Yeah.
And they do have a pretty good memory as well. So the enclosures that they have here, obviously Flash's enclosure is 20 feet. And compared to what he would have in the wild, like a 100-foot tree, Sarcopia tree that they would live in, they still memorize it. So Flash knows his enclosure extremely well, and he knows which path he takes to get up to the top of his hammock, which path he takes to come down, and he sticks to those. He uses the same way every single time, the same hand placements every time. But the other day, he went in there and he first started to go up to his hammock, and then we were like, well, let's go ahead and open up his door. It's warm enough outside, so we opened up his door to go outside. And he realized that about halfway through and was like, oh, well, actually, I kind of want to go outside. So he turned around and started to come back down a different way that I've never seen him come down before. And he was really slow coming back down because he's like, this is weird. I've not done this before. And they're just a little bit more unsure of it if they've not been that route before. And it's the same for wild sloths. They have a whole tree that's 100 plus feet in the air, but they do kind of memorize which ways work best for them to come up and down. And they do come down to use the bathroom. They use the bathroom at the base of the tree every week.
So he doesn't interact with any other animals?
Not yet. So in the future, we plan on putting Dash and Zoe together in the same enclosure because they came from the same breeding facility and they were raised around a lot of other sloths. So they're more acclimated to being around other sloths rather than Flash, where he's not been raised around any other sloths. The only interaction that he has had with other sloths is just quick with Zoe. Sometimes if we're out here holding Zoe and Flash is out here on this branch, Flash will extend all the way down and be kind of reaching down to see if we have any veggies down there for him. And Zoe will notice him and start reaching up to see what he's about and what he's got going on up there. And they'll kind of lock claws for a second. And then they're just kind of like, oh, that's not what I was wanting. I don't know what that was, but I'm not about it. But that's about all the interaction they've had.
So, how long have you been working here?
I've only been here for about 3 months.
Oh, you know a lot.
Yeah, you do. And so you've been able to, become the mom to Dash?
Yeah, pretty much. I was hired on for the sloth keeping position, and so I do all of their encounters and all their feedings and everything like that, so they do know my voice pretty well. But Flash, we've had Flash for almost 4 years now, 3.5 years. And when we first got Flash, we grew a lot in the past just year. We used to have 3 employees, 2 of which being the owners. and another employee. So when they first got Flash, there wasn't a whole lot of people coming in and out. We weren't doing encounters or anything like that. And it was really just John was the sole caregiver of Flash. So he really attached himself to John, his his comfort person. And so if he's having a slow morning where I'm trying to get him to come down, I've already made his breakfast, he smells it, but he's kind of just hanging out in his hammock having a slow morning, I just go get John and he'll come in here and start talking to him, and he comes down pretty quickly for him.
Oh,
So they do all kind of pick their favorites. I think right now,
the TikTok has helped.
oh yeah, definitely.
Because I didn't even know about John till on TikTok. So
Yeah. I'd say that's probably about where 85% of people say that they've heard us is TikTok.
yeah,
The
I
next
think it was
biggest
John
one is-
with the bigger sloths, you know. And I thought originally I booked that one, but that's okay. Because I mean, I thought when I booked my wagon, I booked our, because today's her birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
And I wanted us sisters to try to start doing stuff together. And this is, I wanted the sloth experience, but I you know, I paid her way to, and like I said, I just thought I wanted, like, that wagon went, I was, hang it up, I lost that wagon, you know?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, they get booked up quick,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
and so then I went in with the sloth. I thought I, you know, had it, and all left was the baby ones. He was booked already for the day. I said, that's okay.
Yeah, and Flash, our adult sloth, he's almost 7 years old. We don't hold him. The only kind of interaction that we do with him is we just pet him and feed him his breakfast.
Okay.
And that's the only type of interaction that he has and has ever been used to. Before we got him, he wasn't even used to that type of interaction. He had only had people, come in and out of his enclosure to feed him, and that was about it. So it really took John like the first 2 years that we had him of just getting him comfortable enough to where he would come down and start to eat his breakfast out of his hand. They're really routine animals, and so he would start to establish that routine where he knew when we were in here, he heard us chopping up his breakfast and chopping up veggies, we were going to go in there shortly after and give him his breakfast. And at first he was only comfortable with we'd set his breakfast in his bowl and he'd come down and eat out of his bowl. But then slowly got to the point where he started hearing us chopping up, and so he'd already start to be coming down for his breakfast, and then we'd, stick out a little piece, and maybe he'd take it, and then maybe not want any more, but then the next day maybe take a few more bites from us. And then slowly got to the point where when he was coming down, he was ready to get his breakfast by hand because he wasn't waiting for us to put it in the bowl. And then it got to the point where he would come down, we'd start chopping up veggies, he'd come down and start smearing his nose there in the corner of that window trying to get us to open up that door so we'd come in and feed him. So then it just made sense to go ahead and make out this branch in here so that he'd have a place to hang out in here where we finish up, chopping his breakfast, because he can be really impatient if he's hungry.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what started his encounters, was that we scheduled it around his schedule. He knew that every morning he was going to come down and get his breakfast. We were going to talk to him, pet him, give him his breakfast. So then we just started having others to come in and share that experience with us.
So cute.
And that's the same way with Zoe.
So it's
kind of-
probably good we did get the baby, so we can hold it.
Yeah. Flash, we don't hold, but Zoe and Dash, we both hold them because they were conditioned from a young age to enjoy it.
Because on TikTok, it's a bigger one.
Yeah, that's probably Zoe.
Yeah.
Zoe's actually just a little bit bigger than Flash. She doesn't look like it because she's got a way different shape than he does. She's kind of shaped like a pear, whereas Flash is really cylinder and long, but she's actually a little bit heavier than Flash is.
Yeah, I've seen several TikToks, and now it makes sense to me, where people seem to looks like they're lost. And that's why they do have a pattern.
Yeah, we do. Get that where
Hey.
Y'all shirts.
Yeah.
One, I'm a purple fanatic. So those are cool.
Yeah, she did that.
You must recognize your voice.
I told you at the beginning, he's very ADHD, and if he sees or hears any type of movement back behind him, he about breaks his neck to look back at it.
Oh. Is she getting something out for you?
Well, and another reason that, they can be really disoriented when they're down crossing a street is because they're down out of the tree. That's not their
Yeah.
natural habitat. They are arboreal animals. They spend their lives in the trees. They only come down to use the bathroom, or if they're trying to go find a mate or something like that, or if they've fallen out of the tree and are making their way back up. And so if they're on the ground, on their chest crawling, that's completely upside down for them. Some scientists actually speculate that when they're upside down like that, that's their way of seeing right side up. And when they're on the ground, on their bellies, crawling, that's everything is upside down for them. And it makes sense because everything else that's inside of a sloth is built to be an upside down animal. Everything from their circulatory system, their digestive tract, their skeletal system, everything is designed to be upside down. And so it just makes sense that their eyesight would be as well.
So what kind of predators do they have out in the wild?
So natural things that are out to get them is the number one thing that is a harpy eagle. They can spot those sloths a lot easier than jaguars and ocelots can because most of the time sloths spend their times up in the very tops of the trees. So those eagles can spot them a lot easier. And the grip strength of a sloth is spectacular. They're basically as locking mechanisms that's in those claws that makes it really difficult to pull down. You're not going to get a sloth out of the tree that way, but if you grab and pull up and get that claw off of the branch, then you can get it off a lot easier. And so for that reason, eagles are a lot more successful, whereas a jaguar or an ocelot, if it were to spot a sloth, it would be, out that branch going after it. But the sloth is on the underside of that branch and the jaguar is on the upper side. So it's going to be pretty difficult for them to be able to get down and without falling, trying to get a hold of that sloth. But if something were to startle a sloth to the point where they feel threatened, their goal is to just evade that threat. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to have any type of conflict. So they just want to get to the very end of that branch, away from whatever it is that's coming towards them. And if that means that they get to the end of that branch and they end up both falling out of the tree, that's kind of best case scenario for the sloth because, believe it or not, they look pretty fragile, but on the inside they're kind of built like trucks. They're able to withstand a fall from up to 100 feet in the air and be completely unharmed. Their skeletal system, they have a total of 46 ribs, and those ribs go all the way down right up against their hip bones, and it's basically a protective casing or shell for them for all of their internal organs. There's also a lot of connective tissue that's holding on to their organs and their intestines and everything, keeping it right where it's supposed to, and it's tightly adhered to their rib cage. So it's keeping everything right where it's supposed to be when they're upside down, or when they're just hanging on by their back feet and they're extended all the way down upside down, which they do sometimes to reach branches that are lower, or if they've fallen out of a tree. So when they fall out of a tree, they kind of go spread eagle, all four limbs go out, they kind of fall like a pancake. And when they do that, their ribs are extremely pliable and their bones are, so when they do, they just kind of flexes under their body weight and goes back to normal. And then all the connective tissue that's holding everything where it's supposed to doesn't really allow their internal organs to kind of jostle around like ours would if we got into a car accident or something like that. So they don't really experience any type of internal damage. So it really works out well for them. And the cat is probably not going to be as lucky. Their goal is to try to land on all fours, and landing on all fours from a height of 100 feet in the air, you're going to probably break a lot of things. So
Yeah.
the sloth would go right back up that tree, and
That's
that
why they
cat's
have
probably going to be there
lives.
for a while. Yeah.
You know how some things are an endangered species? Are they having any trouble?
They're not yet.
Sorry.
If we keep it at the rate that it was going before the Conservancy Agency really started to crack down on people, they are definitely moving towards that way. Now their habitat is definitely something that's of concern. The rainforest is ever shrinking. But the Conservancy agencies, where they're native to, have been doing a good job of cracking down on rules and regulations against holding the wild sloths, which is why a lot of places now are shut down. A lot of the independent people that go out and just get to know the cruise ship's schedule, and they know when a cruise ship's going to be boarding, will still try to go out and take sloths and present those to the people that are getting off of those cruise ships, unfortunately. But as a whole, we're doing a lot better than what we were in years prior. And even they've done such a good job of getting the word out of don't touch sloths, don't hold sloths, don't take sloths, that even we experience the backlash of that, even though these guys have been born and raised in captivity and would have no idea what to do if they were to be put out into the rainforest because they've been hand-fed all their lives. We still get a little bit of backlash from that, where people will see that we're holding the sloth and are like, you're not supposed to be holding sloths, you're going to mess up the whole ecosystem they have on their backs, because that's what's been drilled into them by the Conservancy Agency, which is great. But that information is concerning wild sloths, and these sloths are not wild, as you can tell. He's literally sleeping on your chest.
And his tongue sticking out.
I think sometimes he forgets how long his tongue is because he just leaves it sticking halfway out of his mouth like that half the time.
Ready?
Is it my turn?
Yeah, we started about 7 minutes early, so it's really about time to switch if you guys want to. So
Do I need to sit in the blue chair or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll trade out. He'll climb onto my arm and then I'll have you guys trade out seats.
Keep me away from his woman's.
I do not just want to kiss it.
It's
I know.
very tempting, I can tell you that.
It's very tempting. Okay?
Yeah.
Look off. She hurt her knee.
Oh,
Like, for all this. Okay, where's my pocket?
Pocket close. Okay.
alright, so he'll hold on to you the same way that he was holding on to her. This is just how I transfer him over.
Nice sweetheart. Oh my goodness. Oh. He's like, Mama, why you keep doing this? Oh.
Hi, baby. I
Yeah.
wanna get that tongue.
I know. Oh. Oh.
And you can see he's pretty dark compared to maybe the other sloths that you
Yeah,
saw.
I didn't
videos
expect
of.
that.
Yeah, when they're first born, they're pretty dark chocolate mocha color like that, because they're not born already with the moss and algae on their backs that they use for camouflage. And so they rely on that darker coloration to really blend into their moms, because they do stick with mom for about 4 or 5 months. And while the two-toed sloths, the three-toed sloths, they tend to stay with their mother for about a year. Not because they need it nutritionally, they only produce milk for just a few weeks before they're done. Obviously sloths are extremely slow, and the reason for that is because they have to be. They don't have a whole lot of energy because they don't eat a whole lot of calories. They're eating leaves all day long, and it takes calories in order to create ATP, and it takes ATP in order to create, to expend energy and to make milk. So they can't do that for a real long time, but baby will stick with mom for a while to kind of figure out the ropes and learn how to navigate the tree and what to do in different situations and things like that. They actually rely on their mother to start to form the first bacteria colony that they'll rely on to digest their food. So around day 3 of the baby's life, they start to be kind of interested in what mom's doing and what mom's eating and stuff like that. So when mom eats, the food that she's eating, those leaves, will kind of bubble up in the corners of her mouth with her saliva. And baby will smell that and actually lick that up. And the bacteria that mom already has established in her gut is also in her saliva, so that baby will lick up just a little bit of mom's bacteria colony, and then bacteria will do what bacteria does and start to germinate and colonate and develop in that baby's stomach. And it really kick-starts it, because in the wild, the baby is on the mother's chest, and on the mother's back, there's a lot of moths, and that those moths feed on that moss and algae she has living on her, growing on her back. And so those moths will start to crawl on the baby and start establishing that colony on the baby's back. And that's really important for wild sloths, because they get that bacteria they use to digest their food from those moths. And they maintain it by those moths. So in the rainforest, temperatures are always fluctuating, and that bacteria is really sensitive to temperature changes. And so if the temperature drops or something like that, and some of that is, deplenished, some of that bacteria they use to digest their food is deplenished, all they gotta do is lick up some more of that waste that's on their back, and that bacteria colony will be,
That's
deplenished.
So will y'all be building that waste for them?
So that's the thing, is that wild sloths need those moths because temperature is always changing. But captive sloths are in a controlled environment where it's constantly 78 degrees in here. It never drops below that. If it drops below 73-ish degrees, then that bacteria is really in trouble. And if that happens to a captive sloth, where that bacteria colony is destroyed, whether it's through temperature changes or stress, there's not much we can do about that. That bacteria colony is going to be destroyed. There's no sort of a synthetic bacteria that we can give them. Those moths cannot live in this type of an environment, even though it's controlled. They can only live on the back of the sloth, and we don't have a way to transport those. So the sloth would just be out of luck, and it would be about 2 weeks, and that sloth could pass away from starvation, just not able to digest its food.
Oh.
And so obviously a lot of people don't know that. That's something that's very incredible about sloths.
That is.
Which is why owning a sloth is owning a sloth as a pet, I should say, for a member of the general public is an absolutely terrible idea. Because
Right.
just people of the public are not aware of something like that. And that's something that's really important for them. And oftentimes, there's no reputable breeder in the United States of sloth that is gonna sell one of their babies to just, old Joe on the side of the road that wants a sloth. And so a lot of the times, the sloths that people can buy off the internet have been sloths that have been taken from the rainforest and have been brought over. You would think that that would be an illegal trade of animals with wild animals, but it's not. And so it does happen quite often. And so the sloth that has been taken from the rainforest and had all that bacteria colony destroyed, all of that moss, algae, and moss removed from their backs, has a life expectancy of about 2 weeks once those people get a hold of them.
When we
Can
get back
you-
home.
I'm not saying you're going to, but can you breed his sister with him?
We can, so they're not brother and sister, they came from the same breeding program.
Okay.
And they were raised in the exact same way, but they have completely different bloodlines, and so if we wanted to breed them in the future, we could. We don't have any plans to right now, but it's something that we could do in the future, yeah. So we know exactly what their bloodlines are, and we do have a really good relationship with their breeder. But Flash, we know where we got him from, we know maybe the breeder that we got him from, we know he was born and raised in captivity. But don't know his exact bloodlines, and so we wouldn't be breeding him with Zoe just because, we want to make sure that we actually have good genetics if that's something that we ever decide to do in the future.
Yeah, I never heard, as a child, as a young adult, never heard of a sloth in my household.
Yeah.
So I guess that's one good thing about social media.
Definitely expands your knowledge for sure.
Yeah, because there's so many animals and stuff that you're not aware of. I was going to the bathroom at 4:30 this morning, a big orange moth
Oh my
was sitting on the
goodness.
door. Of course, I took a picture. But the picture doesn't go justice.
Yeah.
He's so cute.
I know, it's just like, it's taking everything I have not to
Can
cuddle
you
up.
smell
Kiss
other
that little
animals on you
Yes.
if you take care of other animals?
Probably so. He doesn't really faze him too much just because they smell it all the time. But my primary job is to just take care of the sloths, and so I don't usually have a whole lot of other smells on me. But they do have a good sense of smell, and so I don't wear any perfumes or lotions or anything like that smells really heavy. I wear the same deodorant every day, and I have the same detergent that I use to wash my clothes. So, everybody kind of has their own natural smell. If you walk into somebody's house, their house kind of usually smells like the detergent. But yeah, it can definitely, every time I pick him up, I always talk to him just before I do it and everything, just to let him know who I am. But even if I didn't say anything, he'd know who I am just by my smell. Yeah.
So did you go to school to study all this?
I didn't go to school to study sloths, but I do have an animal science degree, a bachelor's in animal science. And my end goal is to make it to vet school. So I applied last year and got an interview with UT, which is really where I'm wanting to go, but didn't get accepted. And I knew I had a lot of large animal experience and a lot of small animal experience and pretty good grades. So I just figured I'd kind of fill in the gaps for my next application cycle and do some exotics. So I knew about this place because I was riding with the large animal vet that does all the vet work for down here in person. Unless there's an emergency, obviously we have a really tight-knit community of specialists up at UT that we have a good relationship with that we can always take animals up to. But I was riding with him, so I've known about this place for like the past 3 years, and it's only been within the past year really that we've really boomed with a lot of the encounters and a lot of the animals that we have.
Well, I hope you are able to.
Yeah, well, thank you.
You're very knowledgeable.
Oh, thank you very much.
So you live close by?
I live about 45 minutes
So
from here.
do you go, do you have a place here? I'm being nosy.
No, I still live with my parents right now, but I actually just got engaged on Sunday to the owner's son, so
Oh,
I should hopefully be
congratulations.
moving in here within the next
Congratulations.
few months.
Do they live upstairs?
Not upstairs, so you can actually rent out upstairs, it's called the Camel Condo, but the main house that
This
you
is
pass.
where I saw too that. I
Yeah.
saw a TikTok about where you can sleep in super
He's into
camels.
this.
Yeah,
I didn't know that this was
yes,
it.
yeah, it's just above here, so the staircase that's out there, you can go up, yeah, there's little baby kangaroos in there. But the Camel Condo, as soon as you walk in there by the living room, Flash's enclosure goes up 20 feet, and the top 10 foot of his enclosure is plexiglass on one side. So when you walk in, you can see him, taking his nap up there in his hammock. That's
That's
really
too
cool.
cool.
And
That's-
I
there's
hope
like-
this place keeps growing.
yeah, there's like 2 or 3 master bedrooms, and then The kids' room is set up like the Chronicles of Narnia, where you go through a wardrobe to get into there, and then connecting the two kids' room is this tiny little hallway of fish tanks all throughout it, and it's really cool up there. And we try to keep it as affordable as possible for people. If you know, it sleeps like 6 to 10 people, and so for 6 to 10 people to get a hotel like at a Hilton would be more expensive than it would be to stay in the camel condo. So we do try to keep it as affordable as possible for people, because most of the time when they come and lodge here, then they, you know, book encounters too, so.
Because, with Pigeon Forge being like only an hour and a half away,
Yeah.
it's almost a good location
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
the experience, like, it was nice waking up to, I mean, we're seeing this, you know, zebras, donkeys, and, camels where we're at, so. Just to wake up and see that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely
zebra
different.
don't like
The only thing is our
touch the
coffee
salt
pot's
water.
not working. So we couldn't have our cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We don't know what's wrong with the coffee pot.
Mm-hmm.
but the zebra was getting mad at the donkeys because he was close to the salt water.
Oh my goodness.
And we're like, be nice, play fair.
We need to put some more of them out there. But one of our zebras is actually supposed to have a baby here soon, and we really think that it should be pretty soon, because her belly has dropped and her ligaments in her back end have really sunk in,
Now
and
you're
so
gonna
it's
make me
looking like,
That would,
Is it the bigger one or the smaller one?
it's,
I'm not sure about the height
One-
difference, but
one
you
has
can
more
definitely,
hair
you can
than the
definitely
other.
tell the width difference between the two. So there's one
because
that's.
the one with the more hair is mean. Like, he goes around and tries to kick everything.
That might be
That's
the
probably
mama.
Marty.
She might be
Maybe.
protecting her baby that's fixing to have.
Seems like
Oh,
that
look,
was
there's
his
a
kid.
head poking out.
Oh my goodness gracious.
That's Phoebe and Rachel,
Yeah, who takes care of them?
the small exotics people, mostly Tatum and John.
Yeah, that was one of the things I saw after, and I thought, you know, well, if we got up here early enough, it's a good thing we did.
And those are kangaroos, not the other one.
To beat the kangaroos and us.
What's the other one called? No. And there's another one that hops around that's not a kangaroo. No? Okay.
That's the only ones we have here, the kangaroos. There might
But I
be,
mean,
but I'm not.
out in Africa.
Yeah, maybe.
I see.
I've seen videos where they try to attack people's dogs.
Oh yeah, yeah, they can
They
be.
got some muscles.
Yes,
They got
they are
some
very,
muscles.
very powerful animals, which
Yes.
is why we bottle raise all of our baby kangaroos to make them friendly. Nutritionally, they only need to bottle up to 10 months, but we bottle feed our baby kangaroos for 18 months so that we have friendly kangaroos. And we're actually raising a male kangaroo right now as a favor to our breeder that we get most of our baby kangaroos from, because he saw a video of John out there with Ruff, our intact male kangaroo, going, who's a good boy, who's a good boy, and his nose is just right here next to his face, because we bottle raised him for 18 months of his life. So he is a pretty friendly male kangaroo. Now, we do have a rule that anytime you go out there has to be 2 people, because they are, you know, extremely dangerous animals, and if they
Right.
wanted to, they
They've
could.
always got that wild side.
Exactly. But he has never, you know, he has always been a really sweet boy, but we are raising Max out there right now. We've got Max and Ruby, and they're just about, I think they're like 16, 17 months now, so they're just about to the point where we're gonna wean them and he'll go back to the breeder, which is why we have these 2 babies now. So the smaller one there, Phoebe, she's actually our first baby Roo that was born here on the farm. And then we got Rachel from the breeder that Max came from, to raise
Wow.
with Phoebe.
Am I
So we
allowed
always
to
try to raise them in pairs.
touch the foot at all?
So the legs are pretty sensitive
Okay.
on them. The legs up around the face and on the belly is pretty sensitive, because if you think about for them holding onto a branch, if there's a jaguar or an ocelot or something above them, the first thing they're gonna try to grab hold of is a leg or the belly. So those areas for them can be really sensitive. We are trying to work with him to make sure that he's acclimated to all different types of touches, because with Zoe, she was our first baby sloth. We had Flash, we knew how to take care of sloths, but she was our first baby. And with any first baby, you want to do everything just right. And so when she started to show us pretty early on that she was sensitive with her sides being touched, her belly was an absolute no-no place, her legs, she didn't want to be touched. We just kind of went hands off in those areas. We didn't really work with her on that because we wanted her to be comfortable. We didn't want to upset her or anything. And so because of that, she's still really sensitive with those areas. Now Dash does a little bit better when you're touching on his legs and things like that. And while I'm feeding him, I'll touch slowly I'll be doing down his back and slowly go to his side and slowly make my way out his arm. But a sudden touch to his arm can be kind of alarming just because it's out of nowhere, especially if he's kind of in and out of sleep.
So what's the difference between a 2 and a 3-toe?
So the two-toed sloths are the only sloths that you can really keep in captivity because their diets can vary a lot more than the three-toads. So in the wild, they would eat the leaves of the Ocoee trees. In captivity, obviously, we don't have those type of leaves. We have baby spinach and romaine lettuce and stuff like that. That a two-toed sloth can do well eating, but a three-toed sloth cannot. They don't really thrive on that. And we feed them squash, zucchini, sweet potatoes, brown rice, eggs, all things that they would not have access to in the wild. But the two-toed sloths do well on that type of diet. There's still a lot more information to learn about sloths, and there's a lot of conflicting information diet-wise for sloths. But they do overall pretty well with that type of diet. But the three-toed really don't do that well. Now there's a lot of other differences as far as size. So the two-toed sloths, they can get to be up to 20 pounds. The three-toed sloths, sometimes they're referred to as pygmies or dwarfs because they tend to be a lot smaller. They're a lot lighter in color. You can actually tell the gender of the sloths from markings on their backs. The three-toed sloths, like the males have, there's a specific pattern that shows that that's a male versus a female. But the two-toed sloths, you have to do genetic testing. All of their reproductive organs are inside, and so you can't tell by looking if it's a male or a female.
Oh, wow.
And then traditionally, when you think about, if you see a picture of a sloth in your head, you usually see a picture of the banded, little bands across their eyes that's darker. They look like they're smiling, and a lot of times you'll see pictures of them where they're holding all 4 feet onto that branch, and the camera's back behind them, and they've actually got their neck turned all the way back to look at that camera. The three-toed sloths can do that, but the two-toed cannot. Three-toed have 3 extra vertebrae in their cervical spine that allows them to rotate their neck. The two-toed don't have it in their cervical spine, they actually have it in their lumbar spine. So they have the ability to turn their spine all the way back. I can turn about halfway. They can turn it all the way back to look back behind them, so it's really cool. And sometimes when Zoe's being really exploratory, she'll be hooked on by her 2 back feet, but be completely turned around the other way, looking around for, food or just exploring and things like that. Like very bendy.
I thought they were a lot bigger. They look a lot bigger than what they actually get on TV and stuff.
Yeah,
Because I watch like National Geographic and all that.
yeah.
And they just look like they would be like 40, 50 pounds. Because the
Usually
bottom half is kind of bigger than the top half.
yeah, usually the two-toed sloths, they max out at around 20 pounds. Now, Zoe, she's on the chunkier side. I weighed her, so they only go to the bathroom once a week, about every 7 to 10 days. And it had been right at 7 days, and I knew she was going to go to the bathroom that night. And I weighed her, and she was 22.6 pounds, so she's a little bit of a chunk. But she did go down quite a bit after that. I didn't have time the next day to weigh her, but I need to weigh her again right after she goes to the bathroom sometimes.
So they only poop once a week or
Both.
eat?
Both, yeah.
Wow.
So they're most exposed when they're going to the bathroom because they're going down to the base of the tree to do that. And the moths that live on their backs require the sloth to do that because the only place that those moths can live in the entire world is on the back of the sloth. They cannot even fly up from the waste pile of the sloth to find the sloth. They have to have direct contact. So the moths need the sloths to go down to that same spot every time, because if they went here and then went there and then went somewhere else, those moths would then eventually develop. After the eggs were laid, they turn into larvae and then adult moths, but they wouldn't have anywhere to go. So the sloth is very much routine. They always go to the same spot because, last week's eggs are this week's larvae, and this week's larvae are next week's moths. And when the sloth comes down to go to the bathroom, those new moths will crawl back up. The old moths will come down, lay their eggs, and go back up, and the cycle's always repeated because the sloths will eat some of those moths. They do eat a small variety of bugs and insects that are on the leaves that they're eating, as well as that's on themselves. So if a moth crawls up close enough to their mouth, they'll just lick that off, and that'll be their protein source. But the most important part is that bacteria that they get from them to be able to digest their food.
Wow, that's
Sweet baby.
It's a very intricate, very delicate system for the wild sloths.
isn't it?
Even after all of that, of how specific and well designed everything is, there are still people that say evolution is a thing. So for for me, it's much easier to believe that there was a creator that
Yeah,
created it all just the way that it's supposed to be,
yeah.
so that it works perfectly
So
every
you're
time.
not that kind of scientist,
No.
because there is some that,
Yeah, there are, unfortunately.
I work for a doctor and I wonder sometimes about her.
Yeah. Common sense is the best way to go sometimes.
Yeah. I got us these shirts because Jesus take the wheel, and I'm the one driving. It's just like, you need to worry about it, because I'm the one that usually drives with me and my husband, and I'll turn in places that are not supposed to be turned into. Hi, baby. Hi, baby. And he's softer than I thought he would be.
Yeah.
Now, the wild sloth, they tend to be a lot more wiry, as they do have all that moss and everything that grows on them. But if you were to look at a hair of his under the microscope and a hair of a wild sloth under a microscope that had been cleaned off, they would look the same. They have a lot of tiny micro cracks all throughout those hairs that allow for that rainwater to gather in those cracks, and that's what starts to form the moss and algae. So
Wow.
he could form moss and algae on him if he was rained on repeatedly, but we don't keep him outside when it's raining because the temperature tends to drop. And if they had a choice, they'd rather be out of the rain. So
Yeah.
they do have outdoor enclosures if we open those up when it's over 78 degrees, but that's only in the summertime. We be sure to
Yeah.
close them every evening.
I feel you moving that bottom. But
I'm just
I
kidding.
think he's not used to our big size.
I know.
He's stretched to the max.
yeah,
But when we first get them, they're so small that their legs are not long enough to even wrap around my torso. So when we first get him, we have to carry him on our arms, just like how I transfer him over. That's what he was used to doing when he was a baby. Now Zoe, the all 22 pounds of her, cannot go onto my arm like that anymore. So she actually knows that when I come down real close to her and say, let's go knock knock, and she puts both of her arms around my shoulders and she'll transfer over that way.
so what time do you put them down? Not.
So I use that cue word anytime that I go to transfer her. So if I'm
Okay.
getting her off of somebody else, I always say, let's go knock knock, and that'll be, transfer onto me. And if there's somebody else to transfer onto, they'll go onto her, right afterwards.
Where's their ears at?
So it's just behind just a little tuft of hair on either side of their head there. It's just really well hidden. Hey, bud.
He says, are you coming for me?
Oh,
Oh, wow, it's kind of like a bird.
looks like you must like it.
That's what a bird
Oh,
is.
you go ahead and take them on. Good, yeah.
Yeah, we're right
We're
up.
done tonight.
Yeah,
Anyway.
she wants your mama. That is just the sweetest thing. That's how I wish I could be holding them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me help you.
If you give me a cane,
I'm sure you don't mean it.
well, I'm gonna probably need it. You ready? Oh, gosh.
Got it.
Yeah. I thank you for
so very
this.
much.
You're very welcome. I hope you learned a little bit more than we
I
did
learned
before.
more.
I'm sorry we talked you off.
No.
Yeah, we learned more than I ever thought. I never knew that much.
I like it
about
a lot
sloth.
better when people actually talk back to me and I don't feel like I'm talking at people.
Look at the legs.
I think that's why Dash knows my voice so well, because he hears it all day, every day.
Were those other ladies your first sloths?
Yes, yep. Yep. Alright, so Dash is
it. Come on, bud. Let's go. Come on.
So he will hold on to you around your torso. You won't hold him like this. This is just how I transfer him over. So he'll wrap his legs around your torso, and you'll just support underneath his knee.
Bud, you're so much softer than Zoe was.
I think he's looking for some food. Let me get in a little bit of rice here.
I'm getting it, buddy.
He looks over right when I open up that fridge, like, yeah, got her
She's getting me
trained,
something.
got her trained. You just hold this here. Down low. There we go. He can be a little bit of a messy eater sometimes, so I'll apologize for it.
What is this in here?
So that is a mixture of brown rice, shaved up sweet potatoes, and a really high quality dog food that's been soaked in water and then mixed into it. And that's where he gets his protein from up until he's 2. And around then he'll transfer over onto 2 hard-boiled eggs a week.
That's it?
That'll be his protein source. Then he gets veggies and everything else, but the dog food right now is where he gets his protein from. He's much smaller than Zoe is,
Oh
for
my
sure.
gosh, yeah. His fur feels a lot different too.
Yeah. They came from the same facility, they were raised in the same way.
Oh, okay.
So there's still a lot of differences between just the 2 of them. They've got different genetics, different mothers, but they were raised in the same way by the same breeder.
I see you over there.
Yeah, I was posting some of the pictures. and I
Yeah.
was like, are those real?
Yes,
Bird.
they are.
I forget when I have encounters where it'll be the same person, but for Zoe and then for Dash, I forget what I've already talked about, so I have to excuse me if I talk
Yeah,
about the
no
same
worries.
thing, but did I mention about the relationship they have with moths the last time? Okay, so they do have a symbiotic relationship with moths in the wild. Obviously, they don't have the moths here on them in captivity, otherwise that'd be kind of gross to be holding them. But in the wild, they do have a lot of moss and algae that grows on them, as well as moths that feed on that moss and algae. And they have a symbiotic relationship with them, meaning that both parties benefit. So the moths need the sloths, and the sloths need the moths in order to survive in the wild. So once a week, when the sloth comes down to use the bathroom, they do only go about every 7 to 10 days. They go down to the base of the tree every single time to do so. And they're pretty exposed when they do that, so they only go once a week, and their systems are extremely slow anyway. But when they come down, they always use the same pile, and that's because when they come down, they do their little potty dance, they'll start shaking their booty around. That signifies those moths to come down and they lay their eggs in the waste pile of the sloth. And then a week later, when the sloth comes back to that same pile, those eggs have then turned into larvae. And last week's larvae have now turned into adult moths. And those moths will crawl back up onto the sloth through direct contact. And that cycle will always be repeated so that there's always a population of moths on the sloth's back. And that's important for not only the moths, but the sloth. So obviously, the moths benefit from that because they've got transportation to and from their breeding
Right.
ground. Everything's great. They've got their food source, basically, living in their food source.
Yeah.
But it also benefits the sloths. So the sloths will actually eat a portion of those moths, and that will be their protein source in the wild. So here we do 2 hard-boiled eggs a week for their protein. But in the wild, they eat a small variety of bugs and insects on the leaves that they're eating, as well as on themselves. And that's their protein. But the most important part of the entire relationship is the bacteria that they get from those moths. So the moths produce a very specific type of bacteria in their waste, and when the sloth licks that up, that's the bacteria that they use to digest their food. And so it's very specific and very, if it's thrown off even just a little bit, the sloth doesn't have a way to digest his food and can pass away with a full belly of food, just not able to digest it. So then that kind of beckons the question, well, here in captivity, obviously, how do they digest their food if they have no moths on them? So both wild sloths and captive sloths get the first little bit of bacteria the same way from their mothers. Around day 3 of the sloth's life, the baby will start to get kind of interested with what mom's doing when she's eating and how she's doing things. So when mom eats, her saliva will mix with the leaves that she's eating, kind of bubble up in the corners of either side of her mouth. The baby will lick that up and get just a little bit of mom's bacteria that she already has established in her gut and her saliva to then start to develop its own bacteria colony. In the wild, it happens a lot quicker because they've got those moths that are living throughout their fur, and so they'll kind of kickstart that system. But in captivity, they get it the same way, just a little bit for mom. It just takes a lot longer to develop fully because they don't have the moths to kind of kickstart it. So it takes a few months, but after it's fully developed, then they can digest their food no problem. After they're weaned from milk and they're eating solid food, so it's not an issue for them. Now the wild sloths need those moths because temperature is always changing in the wild, and if the temperature drops below what the bacteria requires to thrive, then some of that can be deteriorated. But it's not a problem for those sloths because they just lick up more of that bacteria. For the captive sloths that are in a controlled environment, they don't need the bacteria to be able to lick up some more of it because it's always the same temperature. But if we were to do something stupid like leave the door cracked overnight to the outside, in the summer it wouldn't be that big of an issue, but in the fall or winter, if that did happen, we could come back in and the temperature in here be way below 73 degrees, and that bacteria cannot live in that environment. And the sloths cannot maintain their own body temperature. It takes too much energy to do that. So the sloth may still be alive. You finished that quick, buddy. Were you? Here, I can take that bowl from you. Yeah, I told you he's a messy eater. The sloth would still be alive, but all of that bacteria would not. And so within about 2 weeks, that sloth would pass away from starvation. It could have a full belly of food, still eating every day, but not able to digest it. And there's not a whole lot we can do about that because the only places they get that bacteria from is from their mom's saliva and from the bacteria from the moths, and those moths cannot live here. There's no form of a synthetic bacteria that we can give them, so that's why we always tell people that owning a sloth as a pet is a terrible idea because a lot of people don't know that. There's not many people that keep their houses at 78 degrees, and I keep mine around 72, and that was just not good for a sloth. They can live in an environment like that, but that bacteria could absolutely not. So, I think they just purchased a sign that I can hang out there that says, encounter and process, do not disturb. So that when I'm in here doing one of these, they don't, because I swear 4 or 5 times during the encounter.
Are you getting sleepy again?
I sleep a lot.
No, the coloring difference is that.
So they're the same type of sloth. They're both two-toed sloths, but Dash is a lot younger. And when they're first born, the darkest color on his head there is the color that he was all over. He's just now lightened up to where he has that little bit of gray kind of poking through. And he'll lighten up a lot more over time as well.
And this will get thick on his back like it is on Zoe?
Yeah, so they don't shed out their baby hair. Their baby hair will grow into their adult hair.
Oh.
So as they get older, did you have the VIP this morning? No, it was just with Zoe. So with Flash, he's almost 7 years old, and his hair is even longer than Zoe's. So it will continue to grow throughout their lives, and it gets kind of messy and crazy looking, especially if they're turned upside down, because it all kind of falls the other way. He does best.
Me too.
But I did talk about their eyes, didn't I? Their eyesight,
Yeah.
rod monochromacy, and how some scientists speculate that when they're upside down, that's actually their way of seeing right side up. Yeah, so it makes, not all scientists agree with that. There's a lot of conflicting information about sloths out there because we're still trying to figure them out ourselves. So to know about the rod monochromacy is a big step because if you think about that, what do you have to dissect their eyeball, or do you have to look through, like one of those lenses, or how they do it? I'm not sure, but we definitely are making big, leaps and bounds every day for discovering new things about sloths. But they're definitely very intricate systems. But not all scientists agree that when they're upside down, that's their way of seeing right side up.
It certainly
But
makes sense.
it does make sense because everything else that's inside of the sloth is geared to be upside down. So the locking mechanisms that they have in their claws that allows them to hang on so effortlessly to their circulatory system, their digestive tract, the connective tissue that holds all of their organs where they're supposed to be. Everything is meant to be upside down. And when it's turned the other way, when they're on their belly crawling, that's like everything's just jumbled up. Everything's in the wrong place. Their claws are not meant to crawl, they're meant to hang. So everything's just kind of weird for them. They're very disoriented when they're not in the tree. Their digestive tracts only have a one-way valve into their stomach that allows food to go in, but not back out. And that's beneficial for them because, you know, they're very low in energy. They only eat leaves of the sarcopia trees in the wild, and that's very low in calories. He's licking up that little bit of rice that you have on your shirt. It's very low in calories, but it takes calories in order to create ATP, and that's their energy source. So since they don't have a whole lot of energy, they don't really have a whole lot that means to be climbing around, exploring, and doing random things. So it's beneficial for the sloth. If they're on this branch, there's a branch below them that they've got some leaves down there that they're trying to get, it makes a lot more sense to just extend down from this branch and reach that, rather than have to go all the way to the trunk, all the way down and back out that branch. So the sloths have the ability to hold on by just their both back feet, extend all the way down. And the two-toed sloths can actually turn their spine. I can turn about halfway. They can turn their spine all the way back around to reach back behind them if there's a branch down there at a weird angle that they want to get to. So it's really beneficial for them how they're created to conserve as much energy as possible just by reaching. So, and they are extremely strong animals comparatively. If we were to be the size of a sloth, they would be like 3 times stronger than us. From the moment that a sloth is born, they are able to hold all of their body weight up by one claw holding onto a branch. That would be the equivalent of a newborn holding all their body weight up, which is not going to happen.
Right.
So they are very impressively strong. And I think I may have mentioned it, but clamp down for them is relaxed, whereas this is relaxed for us. So if a sloth were to pass away holding onto a branch, they would not fall off of that branch. They would continue to hold on to that. Because, you know, if when we pass away, we don't all of a sudden tense up, just where when they pass away, they're not all of a sudden going to tense up and let go of that branch. So it's just designed perfectly for them to be able to stay upside down like that.
So they can't regurgitate then?
They cannot, no. They don't have the ability to regurgitate or vomit their food, which is beneficial when they're turned all the way upside down like that. That would be like me trying to do a handstand and eat food. It's probably going to come back out. So it's kind of a double-edged sword though. If they eat too much or if they eat something that doesn't agree with them, that can make them pretty bloated and back them up pretty good. It can also cause an overgrowth of yeast in their system that can cause them some bowel movement issues. So it is really sensitive and has to be well maintained. And they do a good job of maintaining it themselves. Their digestive tract, since it only has the one-way valves, once it starts to get full, it will fire nerve endings and system stuff to be able to tell them stop eating. And they'll stop eating until that system tells them again, okay, start eating. So they can stop eating for hours or even, you know, the rest of the day until their system tells them to start eating again. It does take about 30 days for everything to digest through their system. So from start to finish, obviously it's always replaced, but first bite of food they take today is going to be 30 days before it comes out the other end. But even their circulatory system is adapted to where when they're upside down, putting themselves in all sort of different positions, whether they're all fours onto the branch or just their back feet and they're extended all the way down, it's worked just well enough to where their circulatory system can have valves slam closed and pump harder as needed so that all the blood doesn't rush to their head while still supplying their limbs with blood, because we're designed to be upright creatures, our feet at the lowest point, our heads at the highest. But they can completely invert themselves, they can be all different ways, and their circulatory system will adapt to that. Whereas if I do a handstand, all the blood rushes to my head because I'm not supposed to be that way.
Right. Poor dog, he's ready for rest. Is boy?
Yes, yeah. And that's something kind of cool about the two-toed sloths too, is that the three-toed sloths, you can tell their gender by the markings they have on their backs, but the two-toed sloths, you have to do genetic testing to figure out if they're male or female, because all of their reproductive organs are inside, so there's not a way to tell externally if they're male or female. you have any other encounters today, or was it just the sloths?
We did, the camels.
Yep.
And we did the kangaroos.
Did you ride the camels, or did you bottom
We
feed?
did.
Yeah.
It was like
Grumbly.
grumbly.
He's grumbly every day.
And like, my husband and I were the only two adults.
Uh-huh.
The others were kids, so
Uh-huh.
we were like, let the kids ride them. Like, I wasn't
Yeah.
gonna put Ed through
Yeah.
that, you know.
Ed probably doesn't even feel it when people are on his back, but he lets them know every time that my husband woke up.
My husband got his phone out and he videoed it, you know, so that he could have his
Yep.
crumbling on.
Yeah.
What do you think? Dash, huh? Guess I'll lose my
Yeah. Was he doing the encounter, swinging around? Yeah. Yeah.
He was trying to get my trash, I guess. She's, you know, trying to get him to come back. Because Lucy is the lady that was having the encounter, and I said, oh, is this your spider monkey? And I said, oh, he's so cute. She goes, yeah, but he doesn't think we're very cute.
No.
He's not coming over to us at all.
Yeah, he's gotten a lot more comfortable recently. They've just started doing his encounters. We've only been doing it for like 2 weeks now. And he doesn't have one every day, but he's gotten a lot more comfortable where he doesn't feel like he has to stick right there by the pavilion, and so now he runs everywhere, and is comfortable with that. And so, yeah, it's kind of, I'm not sure what we're gonna do as far as that. We may end up, when we get the store built up there, make his, the monkey enclosure in there, where we do his encounters at.
What is their lifespan out in the wild?
In the wild, we don't know exactly. There's not been any scientist that has been able to track one singular sloth from birth until geriatrics. They're pretty difficult to track for a long time in the wild because their necks are not small like ours are, and they have a bigger head. So they get tracking collars off pretty easily. You'd think with all the technology and everything that we have today, they would have figured out some type of implantation device or something, but I think they're still working on that. But there's not been able to we don't know exactly for the wild. Now in captivity, the oldest sloth that we know of lived to be 54. So they can live to be pretty old given the right diet and the right, nutritional status, which like I said, there's a lot still that we don't know exactly about sloths. We're still, researching and figuring out things as we go about sloths. There's a lot of conflicting information. Some people say this, other people say this, and they swear by it, and they swear by it. And so it just kind of is a lot of back and forth, but if given the right diet for that sloth, they can live to be for a long time. That's really the limiting factor with their life expectancy, is making sure that they have all of the requirements that they need, because this is not the environment that they are naturally born into. They eat the leaves of the Sarcopia trees, and we don't have those leaves, and there's no leaves that replicate the nutritional value that they have in that. We still give them about 75% leaf material, so they get a lot of baby spinach, romaine lettuce, and different type of leafage like that. But that's not going to compare at all to the Sarcopia leaves.
You could get some pictures like of him playing this way.
I can try to see if it's super reactive when I move around.
Does he? So he sees me and hears me as soon as I move at all, and he follows me everywhere with his little eyes. I take a lot of pictures too, so you'll have to go back through and
Yeah, no worries.
look through all the ones that you like.
Yeah, the other ones were really good. Thank you so much for doing that. Oh, there he
Yeah,
goes.
he's like, he has ADHD or something. Anytime he sees any type of movement or sound or anything, he's like, oh, what's that?
You don't want to miss anything, huh? Tatum just put him in that new, that's a bigger pouch,
Yeah.
because he ripped the other one.
Yeah.
Grow it every day.
I'm glad that people don't try to keep them as pets.
Well,
Well, for the most part.
for the most part, there needs to be some more rules and regulations and stuff like that put in place to prevent things like that, because right now, there is no license that you have to own a sloth, which is really unfortunate, because that makes people think that they can just go out and buy a sloth. And there's no reputable breeder in the United States that would sell one of their babies to a member of the general public that had no prior knowledge of owning a sloth. But there are ways to buy sloths on the internet. Unfortunately, a lot of those sloths have been taken from the wild and brought over. And just the stress alone from taking them from their natural habitat is enough to completely wipe out that bacteria colony. And once they're stripped of the moss and algae and moths that live throughout their fur, it's basically impossible for them to digest their food, and their life expectancy is about 2.5 weeks. So,
And I mean, how traumatic
Yeah.
that would be for them.
not only them, but the people as well, because then they get a sloth and they have it for about a week, and then it's like, what happened?
Yeah,
And they just don't know.
and I'm
you know?
sure they're not inexpensive to
Yeah, no.
purchase. Sleeping with your thumbs sticking out. What personality differences do you notice between him and Zoe?
So Dash very much so likes to sit down low, like how he is right now, and if you try to scooch him up like how Zoe does around his
Yeah.
shoulders, he does not have it, and Zoe likes to be up high. Now Zoe, while she's eating, she like curls up into a little ball, and she'll just be eating like that, but if you're behind her, she will extend all the way out and be reaching with her hands to reach that food. But Dash, while he's eating, he still wants to be on you, like he wants to have both his arms wrapped around you and just his head turned to the side to be able to eat. He still wants to be very much on you the whole time. The only time that he pushes back away from somebody is if he sees somebody else walking around, he wants to see what they're doing. But
So
No.
both are nosy.
oh yes, yeah, they both are very nosy, but not as much. Dash is more nosy than Zoe. Any type of movement, he is. Even if he is completely asleep, snuggled in, and he hears somebody open that door, he breaks his neck to look at who it is. Zoe, if she's mid-snuggle and she hears movement, she'll still kind of stay snuggled in, but he's got to know who it is right away.
Now, I know you said that Flash is connected with John more, and
Yes.
Zoe with Donna.
Yes.
Is Dash more with you?
A little bit. Not now. John and I are both kind of on the same likeness right now because I spend a lot of time with him during the day doing encounters and things like that. Where he hears me talking during the encounters and he associates me with the transfer. But for the most part, everybody else holds him. And I'm trying my best to, when I feed him and things like that, let other people feed him, and it's not just me that feeds him, because otherwise he's gonna attach himself to me and not be able to, it'll be like the relationship that Zoe has with Donna.
Right.
And I want them to be able to, snuggle into the person that they're supposed to be snuggling into, not be so worried about what I'm doing the whole time. But John is definitely a close second, if not first, because every evening, even if he has already eaten, even if Donna has already fed him, every evening when they sit down to watch their TV show, he is on John's lap and they're just sitting there content. And so even if Donna tells him, like, I already fed him, he's like, yeah, but he likes to be held. So he has a soft spot for Dash for
So
sure.
is he living up in the house?
Right now
Like
he is.
Zoe did?
Yeah, until he's about a year old. So he's been spending, later in the evenings, he stays down here a little bit later. He's got a kennel out there. It's just a big bird cage where it's not big enough to set his entire basket in, like we do at the main house. We set the entire basket into the bird cage that he's in up there, and he's able to climb around if he wants to. But that bird cage is small enough we can't set the whole thing in there. So he doesn't love it as much because it's not as comfortable, and they are spoiled little sloths and like to have somewhere to lay the whole time. They don't want to be holding on to something, or holding on to a branch, I should say. They'd much rather hold on to a person. But he's spending more time down here now to slowly kind of acclimate him to being down here. And I think our goal is to be able to put Zoe and Dash together and just have them have separate hammocks, separate sides of the room that they can, spend their time apart from each other if they don't want to be right up on each other. Because in the wild, they're pretty solitary animals, and so we try to mimic it as best we can here.
So I'll put that down back in there. Oh my gosh.
I
drink
some.
Well, you are now.
Door open, didn't it?
It is right at time, so he's gonna go ahead and put one to me here.
Oh, I'm the good
You'll have to just knock all that
Okay.
rice
I was
and
like,
everything,
what?
just put it into the floor, it's
I'm like,
fine, I'll
what
have to
is
sweep
that?
here in a
What
second.
is that? I forgot about it already.
Yeah. Yep, he's a messy eater, and has no shame in it.
He's a boy, you know.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming back and
Thank you
hanging out
very
with me
much.
again. Makes time go by a little bit quicker.
Thank you for all the information.
You're welcome.
I appreciate